Hello, everybody, and welcome to Untether.tv. I'm your host and founder, Rob Woodbridge. You come here to find out how companies have built their companies in the mobile space, maybe take a little bit of what they're doing, maybe use their services to augment your business, never stealing, always looking for ways and ideas. That's what this is about, is idea sharing in the mobile and pervasive computing space. We've got a really great show, a treat for you today, actually. I say Lars Albright. You think what? You think iAds, you think Quattro, you think Session M, and we've got the co-founder and the CEO of Session M, and his name is Lars Albright, on the show to talk about a bunch of things around the future of mobile advertisements, loyalty, increasing engagement in apps. This is going to go on and on forever. These are the things that a lot of developers are challenged with today. And I'm really happy to have an expert in this field who's creating these things, these tools that will enable this. Lars, welcome. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Happy to be here.
Boston guy. I don't have my Yankees paraphernalia floating around here. I just don't want to anger anybody. Sorry about the Red Sox if you are a Red Sox fan. My apologies.
We're moving on to the Patriots. We'll focus on the football season now.
It is good, and without a hockey season so far, the Patriots are it, obviously, in New England and Boston area. So really appreciate you doing this. This is a thrill for me simply because a lot of people ask these questions that I've asked of you before we went live around mobile engagement and ads and the future of ads and how in the hell do I get people to use my app more than once, and then how do I keep it on the device for longer than 30 days? So I'm hoping that we can get some of these answers. But you have such a rich background that we're going to also get into. But I'd like to start. What is Session M?
Sure. Yeah. So at a high level, Session M is a platform that helps developers and advertisers connect with consumers in a new way. So some of the themes that we tap into is we've seen that consumers really like to be recognized and rewarded. So that's one thing that we see as important as part of the new approaches in the mobile space. So really trying to look at the consumer and how can you capture their attention in new ways, in a way that's fun and rewarding to them. The second is just looking at the changing consumer and what they're doing in the digital landscape right now. And one of the stats that we often quote is that digital natives, so consumers who are using digital devices frequently, change consumption 27 times in an hour. So change screens 27 times in an hour. And when you think about it, that poses an amazing challenge for both publishers of content and advertisers to actually connect with those consumers. So, how do you do that? How do you come up with fun, creative ways that bring people into the fold? And that's what our platform's all about. We're trying to create a different way that's not just the banner, not just trying to hope that someone clicks on something, but really is a system that people get to know, enjoy, and get value from.
Well, it's 27 times. That's the kind of fragmentation of our attention, isn't it?
It is, and it's why you've got to do these new. I call this sort of the third phase of mobile advertising. We can talk about some of the earlier ones, but the early phase in sort of the '06 period to through '09 of just trying to get banners and trying to show you could deliver to an audience. Moving into the phase where Apple and Google make their acquisitions, jump into it. You've got the rise of some independent networks like Millennial. You've got some mobile dominant brands like a Pandora or a Foursquare come to the fold. And now we're in the third phase where we've proven that there's an audience. We know that people are spending 10% of their time on mobile devices consuming media. And now it's trying to think, okay, how do we connect with that consumer? And our belief is that you've got to provide value. You've got to provide something that is engaging and fun. And the way we do it, just to quickly continue to describe our approach with our platform, is we allow developers to set engagement milestones that could be around anything from as simple as coming to an app every day, watching a video, sharing with friends. And then when people unlock those engagement milestones, they get rewarded with something called mobile points, M points. And then those M points can be redeemed for all sorts of cool things, gift cards, charitable donations, sweepstakes, trips, all sorts of stuff. But in that process, we allow sponsors to congratulate our users on their milestones. So someone like an American Express or a Ford or a McDonald's can say, hey, congratulations, would you like to amplify your points and opt into a fun ad experience, which could be a game, could be a social poll, could be a video that's short and gets them engaged. And then they get rewarded for that, and they can go in right on their phone onto the store and redeem. It's all an HTML5 overlay that sits on your favorite apps, so you don't have to go anywhere else. You can always X out and be right where you want to be. What we're doing is we're creating a system that consumers start to understand, they start to enjoy, and we're just seeing incredible rates that are really flipping the traditional rates on its head, where in traditional banner advertising you have close to 90% of the people ignore the ads or find them irritating, and maybe a 0.5 up to 1% click. In our case, people see that opportunity are between 75 and 80% of the time are actually opting into the ad experience, and 95% of those are going through and finishing the ad view and then going into our storefront. So it's an exciting way to get somebody to actually participate and engage, as opposed to that traditional experience, which is a very small percentage. And then when they're actually in the ad unit experience, you're not quite sure how engaged they are.
Well, you said a lot there, simply because this is a, I think that a lot of companies, two types of companies, the advertising networks that popped up, as you said, in 2006, and Quattro was one of them. And what we're seeing now is an evolution in the product that is pretty substantial. But I think that we started from a very weak base around, we took that old model of display advertising, banner ads from the web, and brought it into a mobile device that really didn't enhance the experience like what you're talking about here. And we're gonna get right into session M in a second, but I want to pull back a little bit and talk about. You essentially, and maybe I'm glorifying this, but you essentially created iAds with the acquisition. Apple acquired your company, Quattro, and then lo and behold, you went in, iAds appeared. Am I simplifying this? You can now be anything you want to be to my audience, if you want to tell the truth.
Yeah, sure. Well, simplifying that, I was not the individual creator, but as a team, our group from Quattro was bought in late 2009, very end of December in 2009, and brought in January to integrate the Quattro ad platform into the iOS 4 release that was coming out. And that is what we did. We basically took our platform, integrated it into the new operating system, and made it so developers would have an option just to very simply and easily check, yes, I want ads. And really the thesis that Jobs had around this approach was he wanted developers to be able to make money on the iOS platform to attract, continue to retain and attract the best developers. So it really started with this desire to make developers money, and he felt that if you make developers money, you'll get the best developers to make the best apps, and that's going to help the whole Apple system continue to roll. So that's what we did, and we launched that with iOS coming out pretty aggressively. Just about 3 or 4 months after the acquisition, we rolled out the iAd platform.
Why do you think Apple bought you guys? I mean, you were one of a handful of ad networks, I would say, or technologies. Why Quattro? Did you get a sense? I know I'd have to probably ask them, but what was your sense?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I mean, one, there's a it's a pretty well-known story out there that they first went after AdMob and tried to buy them, and so we were their second choice, but we were fine with that. It ended up working out well.
Second is okay, man. If you say okay. Yes, yeah.
So I think what they were looking for in both AdMob and Quattro was one, a market leader who was out there, who had been doing this for several years and had established themselves to developers and advertisers as a leader in the market. They liked Quattro. One, we had a very deep team with experience across the mobile space, very deep technology team, and we also were good at working with brands. So Jobs really liked the brand positioning of the company, that we worked with P&G and we worked with big companies doing innovative things. So when you thought of Apple, and what we did earlier with iAd was really focus on these big brand deployments, that was very similar to what we were doing at Quattro.
Okay, so it was a natural extension ultimately, but I often say being second is fine. Being your second choice is fine, as long as the check doesn't bounce and they're happy and you can actually have an impact on their business. So many people.
And with mobile, I find it's such a competitive space right now. There's a lot of players in it, and really the key is to be one of those top market leaders. There isn't just one typically, but if you are one of a handful that really is making a difference in the space, you can be very successful.
Why now? Obviously, AdMob maybe said no, maybe said yes. Whatever happened there. What was it about the offer from Apple to you guys that made you say yes? I mean, forget the zeros and all that garbage, because you're building a business that ultimately would be worth that anyways, right? Not about the money, or maybe it was. just overthinking this, right? It was about the money, Rob. You can say that too. But what was it about the offer? What was it about doing this that made you say yes?
Yeah, well, I think the one thing I would push back on a little bit is it wasn't a certainty that the money would be there. And you never quite know when you're in these things how they're going to work out. So when you have an offer that is firm, and is a good offer, and economically is good for you and your investors, it's hard not to at least look at that carefully. So that got our attention for sure.
Yep.
But what really made us feel like it was the right thing to do, and still to this day it makes us feel it's the right thing to do, even though we've seen some of our counterparts go public or go out there for bigger dollars, is we felt working with Apple and getting involved with the senior team there was a really unique opportunity. And to be able to launch the first ad-related business that Apple's ever done. They've never done advertising services in the history of the company. We felt like that was a pretty special opportunity and something we all wanted to try to do. Also, some of the things that were important was that there were no layoffs involved in the deal. It was an attractive deal to our employees. The people who have stuck around have made a significant amount of money based on the appreciation of the stock. It was at 194 when they bought us. All cash deal, but everyone got a nice amount of RSUs and incentives, and those have been very lucrative. So we did really, even then, we didn't know it would go to 700 a share, but we're very bullish on Apple as a company and good about our ability to do well there. So all those things came together and added up to us saying this is the right time to be acquired.
Well, yeah, great answer, and I think that oftentimes I sometimes, and we are all very flippant of an acquisition where people say no, and there's obviously a good reason to say no, but there's always a good reason to say yes, and I love the fact that you went through that, like the methodology in order to be able to make the decision. It's well worth it. Yeah, and I'm not going to ask about secret sauce inside of Apple. This isn't what it's about, but. There's a lot of criticism that happened as a result of iAds. It was a very expensive, brand first, not small business friendly environment, and we all know that the cost was up there, $1 million, and then dropping down to $500,000 to play in that space. It is now that you've stepped out a little bit. I mean, when you look at iAds, what happened? I mean, is it still relevant? Is it still important? Is it coming back to being important with Passbook that's coming out? I mean, what's your general sense about that? Knowing that, don't tell me anything that you don't want to tell me, and you can not answer that if you don't want to answer that.
Yeah, no. You're a good summary of what happened in the beginning, and in hindsight, we made a mistake in the beginning in how we came out with the pricing strategy. It wasn't entirely in our control in the sense that Steve had some really strong beliefs in how he wanted to go to the market with a very premier service and at a pricing level that showed that Apple was serious about attracting real dollars, not just mobile dollars, but dollars more broadly speaking from the digital landscape and the television landscape. And there was some really good merit to that. But in terms of a long-term strategy, I think that's where we underestimated the challenges of continuing to sustain those type of buys. So for the launch, I think it was great. Steve was involved, and our CEO, Andy Miller, and Steve were good at bringing in these big deals, and we had a lot of success in bringing in, I think, 17 to 20 big multi-million-dollar deals. And that was really exciting for the mobile industry. I mean, even if we had stopped just after that, it probably would have been successful because it got so many people talking about mobile, talking about advertising, seeing that Steve believed in it. He was up on stage going through the different things we were doing with Nissan and others. So that had a big impact. But the challenge was over the longer term, you have pricing pressures and you have to be more flexible and accommodating to the buy side of the market and the agencies and the clients directly. And that was something that took some learning for Apple as an organization. We were a little bit more used to it at Quattro because we came from a smaller hustling environment that was trying to get done. But it took some time to get that feedback and that input into Apple, into the senior management team, to get them to say and buy into becoming a more affordable option and more flexible. So what I think iAds is doing now is they're doing just that. They're responding to the feedback. They're adjusting. They've got a good team in place. The technology is great. The targeting is phenomenal, which is always going to make them very relevant. And they're doing some really cool things with their targeting, and they're getting some very large buys from big brands who are impressed with that. So there's still, one thing that's important for people to know is it's still not something where everyone's buying on sub $1 million, sub $500 million. There are plenty of brands that are buying at that multi-million-dollar level, but in order to scale the business to a large business, they had to be more flexible. Yeah. So, a good early splash, a bit of a mistake to stay to that pricing in the early phases, a learning period, and now back to being more flexible. And I certainly think relevant because I think they'll be an important player for the ad space.
Yeah, Apple doesn't go into these things with the intent to create a common brand, and we know that with all of the hardware that they put out there, they're not afraid to charge for the services that they're providing, and you want to be at this stage of Apple's life. If you're a big brand, a regarded brand, you want to be with another big regarded brand, and I think that they have that obviously going for them. It's and it's good to know. They certainly set a pace, and you guys did set a pace for the advertising community. But about a year ago, little over a year ago, maybe you step out. Just a little over a year ago, you step out and you form Session M. And there must have been a reason. There must have been something that you were seeing in the marketplace that you couldn't accomplish either with iAds or Apple, or that they were going in a different direction. What was it that was so important for you to step out and start something like Session M?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are a couple of factors that came together to make me feel like there was a really good opportunity to do something different. So one was just looking at the developer community and seeing what was going on with churn and retention rates, and really pretty startling to see how significant it was in terms of watching downloads and then seeing this spiral down to active users, and people time and time again going from 1 million or 2 million downloads and then having maybe 4 or 5% of that download base active over a sustained period of time. So, and I spent a lot of time on the developer side of the business when I was at iAd, and so I worked very closely with a whole range of partners, and they all struggled with this issue. So I dug into that problem and said, hey, this is a real problem. People have to figure out how to engage their consumers more frequently, get them to come back to their applications, get them more involved in the content. So that was the first part of thinking about Session M. And then the second was a belief that really we need to do something different on the ad side around value exchange, around recognizing consumers for their time, because I saw this somewhat static rates of engagement. They were decent at iAd, maybe not as good at the other networks, but still not progressing the way I think they can in this next phase of mobile. So the combination of trying to help developers get that engagement and then integrate an ad experience that was more satisfying and rewarding got me thinking, okay, there's got to be a platform here that can accomplish both. And that's where I got started with my co-founders, Scott Weller and Mark Herman. We started talking about different ways to approach the market, and over time came up with the Session M approach.
A question always, whenever I talk to anybody in the mobile advertising space, it always opens up I agree with you, Rob, or I totally disagree with you, Rob. And I'd like to ask this to you, Lars, you have a firm belief that mobile in its purest form is probably, we know it's the most personal of interactions, most personal of devices. You don't share your phone, you show your phone, you don't share it. It knows everything about you, everywhere you go, everything you've done, everything you've bought, every person you know, every contact you've made with them, and the way that you made with them. So it's a very personal device. But here's mobile advertising in its traditional sense, where people are celebrating. We're talking champagne, parties, celebrating a 2% engagement rate, or a 2% what they consider a click-through rate, which is a terrible acronym or a terrible way of describing the mobile experience, especially in advertising. So I look at advertising in mobile and say, well, if you know so much about me, I would expect a 98% click-through or engagement rate, because what you're pushing to me is so relevant. Why are we satisfied at 2% today? Maybe, and I know you're not, and your customers are certainly not. And why aren't we celebrating? Why aren't we at 98% engagement? And is that the goal?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. One, I'd say 2% is actually higher than the norm, and people celebrate far less than that. And typically right now it's a more blast out a lot of banners. There's lots of, there's tens of millions of people you can hit up with these things, and then hope you get whatever click-through rate you get. And then, really the problem with click-through rate is, as you were alluding to, is that that's not really the measure of success. It's really what does somebody do after? What is the action that the advertiser wants them to do? So, looking at those metrics are really what matter, opposed to click-through rate. We believe so firmly in that we actually charge predominantly on a cost per engagement basis. So we don't charge on a CPM, and we don't really charge on a click-through unless the action is completed. So cost per engagement is just, if someone actually watches the video, plays the game, finishes the survey, does those things, then that's a billable event for us. So fortunately, we're seeing those high initial engagement rates or click-through rates, but really what we're measuring and what we get paid upon is the action that happens. I think the goal, 98% is a pretty lofty goal, but good aggressive goal to have.
Yes.
But certainly was to make these experiences, more valuable for consumers, because as of to date, they really just, by and large, they are not seen as valuable. So part of it's a perception change that if I click on this, I will get something of value, or I'll see something that's important to me. So that combination of value, relevance, that's talked about a lot in the mobile space, but you got to be relevant to somebody, and that's kind of a basic piece. But the combination of that value, that relevance, and that experience. The experience needs to be more than just going to a microsite. I clicked on an ad for IBM the other day, and IBM's a great brand, and the banner was fine, but I just got to a microsite that was kind of full of specific IBM info, and it just wasn't that engaging. And as a result, I didn't spend that much time on it. So we need to think carefully about what is really going to capture someone's attention, and why are they going to engage for a sustained period of time. So what we're trying to do also is show that if you do recognize and reward somebody, like a lot of real world programs do. I mean, think about American Express or Nike Plus Health or what Clout does online. The notion of game mechanics and rewards are proliferating throughout all the different things that we do. But if you do that, what we're finding through independent studies that we run is you get, not only do you get the engagement, but you're getting tremendous brand lift, positive brand association. We're seeing great results where people find the brands, use our programs to be more innovative and forward thinking. So our approach is do what works to drive this engagement, and we're showing that consumers like it, it's working. And that's what's going to get people saying, you know what, this banner is not annoying. It's actually something that's going to be valuable to me. And it's also interesting, I'll finish by saying that it's amazing how many bad examples you can see of advertising kind of at its worst. One example I look at, I won't even name the developer, but they have a page where you can pay to get out of advertising. It says pay 99 cents to see no ads. And they had this, I heard from the management team, they debated about, should we get rid of this? And, is it a bad sentiment? And then someone said, well, you can't get rid of it because it generates so much money for us. But just that in and of itself shows you that the ad experience is not good. They're letting people pay to get out of it. And that, look at the bottom. And on the bottom it says it's an ad for Nike, a banner-based ad for Nike that was targeted to that page. And what a waste. Nike's being associated with this page that says get rid of ads. So things like that have got to stop. And that's just there are a lot of examples that still exist like that. So we got to do better there, and we have to do better experiences that are more timely and relevant.
Well, it's been my goal always to bring to light the best practices when it comes to this mobile industry. I'm a purist, right? I get so disappointed when I see stuff like that, and I get so disappointed for the abuse that runs rampant in this industry. As we're trying to get our platforms right, and we saw this in the web days, in the early days, where there were snake oil salesmen everywhere, just selling garbage everywhere, and it kind of sullied the industry. And I think ultimately what we've done with the web space is that with a 0.05% click-through rate in banner ads, and we're celebrating that, a 1% or a 1.5% click-through rate in mobile, everybody was jumping up and down for joy, saying, "Wow, look at this! We're 38 times greater than the banner ads," and they're so different, right? And I think that's the message that I keep pushing out, is that you have to rethink. It's not the same kind of thing, and part of that is this volume versus value. You brought up value and context, but are we moving from, when it comes to this advertising platform, and that's what it becomes? It's a mass distributed, personalized advertising platform, but are we going from where it's the traditional advertiser or network is just pumping as many ads as they can, and we're hoping for click-through rates, and that's the old school. But that's the volume play. But are we moving into a more segmented time where you may only get in front of that customer one time with a very targeted ad, but you're gonna get them to an action? So instead of macro awareness, it's very much micro and targeted. And are we coming into that era?
I think we're coming. I don't think we're there yet, and I still think we've got a ways to go. I think we're early in that phase of development, and I think the micro targeting that you described will be relevant, but that doesn't mean there won't be kind of a repetition in that. I mean, there still is a need to sometimes. I think there's been some studies that can show the optimal time to hit someone with a message is maybe 5 to 7, not just once. So there's always going to be ranges of how frequently you deliver a message depending on the particular campaign. But I agree with the statement that we're trying to move more into making every ad delivery matter more and not have a lot of waste and not a lot of people saying, I'm just going to tune this out because I've seen it 100 times or it's completely irrelevant to me. I like to give the example of an app that I like to use that, I woke up at 6:15 in the morning in New York and there was an ad for a double cheeseburger. I don't want a double cheeseburger at 6:15 in the morning. So things like that, we've got to make sure that the usage or the use of it is done in a way that's better than some of those examples. So I think we're starting that phase, which is exciting. We're not, it's early. I wouldn't say that the mass will go away, but we're starting the next phase.
You think about that though, all of our preconceived notions around advertising and engagement rates and the number of times we have to hit up, you have to be in front of somebody are all based on that passive nature of the way that we've done advertising. Newspaper ads, television ads, radio ads, internet ads. And I wonder if this paradigm changes that over here, you might need to reach them 5 to 7 times, be in front of them 5 to 7 times. But as you're saying, contextualize, and I'm not talking about right now, a little bit of advanced here, but contextualized ads that you have to reach out, and if you hit them right, you'll hit them the one time, and it will create an action and then move things forward. And I think that the power of mobile enables that if we just start thinking a little differently about the platform. That's just my hope, right? So that we're not nailed with bad advertising all the time.
Yep. No, good thought. I agree.
So now, what about things like expectations? Obviously you guys are out there selling your platform to brands. How do you manage expectations? How do you pitch them on what it is that you're offering?
Okay, so the first thing that a buyer could expect on our platform is some of the things that you would want in a mobile ad buy, some of the standard things. So like scale, you want to be able to reach millions of people depending on targeting, but you want to make sure you can reach scale. The other is targeting. So we do all the standard level mobile targeting, we do geo, we can do different things on that front, categories. But then we layer in some interesting behavioral targeting that allows us to look at the levels of activity within our user base. We can also look at the rewards redemption history. We can bring all that together in kind of a very interesting, unique profile. So the target is rich with our platform. The next is a quality audience across all categories of apps. And this is really important because we don't just focus on one segment of applications. So a lot of people will go out and say, we nailed the games category. We're all about games. And that's okay. That's got value. And we certainly work with a lot of games and bring them into the fold with a lot of our brand buys. But we work across big partners like the Weather Channel or Sony or Livestrong, part of Demand Media, or GolfLink. We have a whole set of applications that are high quality apps and that work across different channels and not just apps, mobile web as well. So we're across all the different platforms. So that's another piece. And then it comes down to the sort of the results piece of it, that we are going to, and their message is going to engage a consumer in a way that is positive for the consumer and something that they actually spend time and they're going to get billed for that action. So if a brand wants people to watch, like American Express wants people to watch videos, we will deliver those videos and those views and get an engaged consumer. If it's American Family Insurance that wants to target to 13 DMAs in the Midwest, and we created a driving game for them that people could play for 30 seconds, we'll do that and they'll see that piece of it. So for us, it's bringing together the unique targeting, the scale, the diverse audience, and then the fact that the results are really going to be there and consumers are going to opt in and engage. That's one other piece I'll close with on this answer is that people, you opt into our ad experience. So you're not forced into it. You can actually bypass it. You can skip our ad experience altogether and still go get rewards. So we are not forcing people to consume, which I think is part of the reason why we get such a high complete rate and high engagement rate. So those are some of the things that we would tell someone to expect if they bought with Session M.
I mean, I love that. The simple fact is that we were talking about this earlier, just about the future of this industry a little bit, and I was lamenting that this is what I would hope, and I think that that's one of the key things is that your conversion rate is so high because people are engaging. They are physically engaging in that. It's not like a fat finger a mistake by hitting a banner ad, right, and then making a mistake. This is actually people engaging with it. And I've seen it in your apps. I'm up in Canada; they don't work, but I played this. I got addicted to this basketball game, right, that I saw on your website, and you could see how it would work. And then I also downloaded the Livestrong app, and you could see how it would work. It's a passive sell, but once you're in there, it's like, hey, rewards. Click here for some rewards, and then you're in, and you're engaged to that point. So, but what are some? How do people? How do people? I don't know. Increase success with your ads. Is there's got to be a bar that is set with what you're offering versus somebody else, and how do people increase their success rate with what you guys are offering? You've given some examples, but maybe throw out some examples of how companies have succeeded with you.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. One is coming up. People will come up with formats that really are compelling to the consumer. So one example is we did a movie. We supported a movie release for Universal Pictures, and we came up with a sequential delivery of clips from the film, little previews that people could watch. And the deeper you got into that experience, the more you got rewarded with our endpoints. And we found just unbelievable results for the average user was spending around 3.5 minutes consuming content and getting deeper and deeper. So it was the post action we saw a 400% increase in the Fandango gift card reward that people could go into our store and redeem. So we saw this great tie-in between people spending time with the movie, getting excited about it, and then using their currency that they earned in the application to go in and redeem for Fandango. So trying to really tie that impression to an actual action or transaction. And we see a lot of that success, not only in the engagement in the ad unit, but the post clicks are really impressive as well. So that's something that we pride ourselves on, and not just delivering the ad experience, but then if someone wants them to go to a site, or they want them to go to Facebook, or they want to do something else, we see a lot of success there. So that's just one example of something that has really worked well.
How much work does that take for you guys? Are you infinitely scalable, or is it employee based? I mean, a lot of the ad networks are doing this, in automatic, and I think Google AdWords and AdSense did this, at the very beginning, simple ads that anybody can participate in. But it sounds like, just like the iAds program, your involvement is necessary, and is there a lot of upfront work that you guys have to do?
So we want to take the same consultative approach that we have with our direct sales and bring that into anything we do that would be on the self-service side. And we want to provide a framework and a guide and best practices. So it's not going to be the sort of a totally open environment that you can do anything. We're going to really guide that experience. And if we do that, I think we'll be successful.
Yeah, because you build your reputation up as somebody who can execute, as a company that can execute, and you've kind of cracked this nut. And then I guess the last thing you want to do is have this bring down your average of success rate, of engagement rate. And it's always a concern, right? Because you've got to balance the need to scale. Most of these companies that are listening to this or watching this are coming to this point where it's like, there's so much hand-holding, but that's part of the early days and establishing a brand and establishing yourself in this industry, right? You must have done that with Quattro. You did it with iAds. You've got to be doing this with SessionM. Humans.
Yeah, you do it. We've done it in all cases. You really do, particularly when you need these early phases of an industry. You've got to do it. I mean, Quattro, as an example, we actually went so far as to build mobile websites. This is pre the app marketplace, pre the smartphone sort of adoption, pre iPhone, and we would go to big media companies like the NFL or CBS or Univision and let us help you, and we'll build a formatted mobile, building these mobile websites. It was involved in publishing their content, and we did it really just so we could get access to that inventory when the traffic grew. And that was an example of kind of how far we had to go in those early days to support these customers on the developer side or the publisher side. And likewise with the brands, we helped P&G mobilize a lot of their experiences. So you have to do that. At iAd, we did it as well with our big partners, and we're doing the same thing here. But we've learned along the way the things that you need to do to position yourselves to truly scale, and that's what we're doing with the organization, with the tools we create, with the algorithms we create. So we do create efficiencies, even though we want to remain very focused on client services.
All right, so oftentimes we talk about the engagement level inside of these applications, it is terrible, right? The statistics are staggering. If you're an app developer right now, you know that you have a limited amount of time that your app is going to be on desk, on screen, and before it gets erased and then completely forgotten. And so part of the strategy has to be what you guys are doing is bringing people back into the apps in order to be able to drive more usage out of those apps. So what kind of stats are you seeing? What kind of engagement rates are you seeing as a result of people wanting to collect the rewards through your platform and then re-engaging with that app that maybe they wouldn't have before?
Sure. Yeah. So it's absolutely a major issue, and it's one that a lot of companies don't necessarily want to admit it because very few people want to raise their hand and say, "Oh, we have an awful problem getting users to come to our app." But the reality is, they're all dealing with it, and it's a big issue. And really, some of the bigger companies are some of the worst offenders because they start by reporting on downloads, and that becomes kind of organizationally accepted. And then when you say, well, wait a second, how many active users do they have? Like, well, we don't really like to report that number because it's so much lower than our downloads. And that would be depressing to our bosses, our management, and it becomes a real problem. They just pay attention to cumulative downloads. So you really got to look at active users. We're obsessed with DAUs, daily active users, MAUs, monthly active users, and that's what you gotta track carefully. But I'd say one of the most important statistics that we see, and what's exciting for us, is we're seeing that consumers that are actively engaged in the Session M program are spending or are coming back 2 times as often. They're doing 2x the amount of sessions than non-users in those applications. And we're constantly doing studies across our different partners to look at those numbers. But one result we just came out with showed this 2x increase on the number of sessions an active user in our program was consuming versus someone who was not active in Session M. And that's pretty powerful. That gives you, 2 times the chances to go and show content to that user, get them exposed to other parts of your application. It gives you 2x the amount of times to monetize that user. So that's really where it all starts, is driving that more active and engaged user, and we're doing that.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about that. Is that the metric? It's such an important thing to pick, right? And most people did that. They talk about users, or they talk about downloads that they've had. And one of the organizations that I'm working about, they talk about page views. Page views in an iPad app. And when we talk about how many people are engaged daily or monthly, they don't have an answer for that, but they're selling it based on page views. So how do you talk to those types of people, those types of organizations that are still fixated on the download or the page view, when what they should be fixated is on the daily average use or the monthly average use? How do you crack that?
It's a challenge. Part of it's just educating them that this is what the market really does demand to know audience size. Smart buyers aren't impressed by just page views or total impressions. They're going to want to know at least average impressions or page view per user, and they're going to want to understand how many are active. So I think the best way to convince people that they need to adopt the new, or a more specific framework is by telling them that if you really want to get the dollars and the smarter buyers and where the money is, they're going to want to know your active user base, because they know that that's the most important thing to getting their message out there. So, first and foremost, they're going to want to know that, and then they're going to want to know, how are you reaching them, and is it a quality audience, and things around the various targeting opportunities. But it does start with knowing that active audience, and it can be hard. Frankly, with some organizations, it can be challenging to get them to really move away from that overall download fixation.
Here's a tip: is that if you're an organization that is still, selling in those terms, downloads and page views, just find dumb customers, right? It's ultimately what it comes down to. You heard it here. Don't say that I never gave you any advice. Just go find dumb customers, which is not good advice. We are speaking with Lars Albright, who is the co-founder of Session M. He was also the co-founder of Quattro and a senior VP in Apple, and one of the co-creators, I suppose, of iAds. Nobody from Apple listens to this anyway, so you can lie all you want here, Lars. All right, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about 4 or 5 or a couple really specific techniques for mobile ad engagement. The experience that you've had has been phenomenal, and you've seen this industry grow up to where we are right now. You have an idea of where it's going, but from a layman's term, where do people start with this stuff? And how do they get engaged? And then what should they be building on? What should they be looking at? How do they augment their mobile advertising experience, because a lot of them aren't succeeding very well, and it's got to be frustrating, and it could really hamper this industry if they go away feeling, mobile advertising doesn't work, and we all know that done right, it's a pretty effective tool. So how would you start them off here?
Sure. Well, I think the first place to start is you got to think beyond the banner. Like, don't just check the box in mobile if you're advertising and say, hey, I spent my 50 grand in mobile. I blasted out banners. I got a 0.6% click-through rate. Something happened after. I'm not sure if it worked really well, but I did mobile. I'm happy that I did mobile. Or I can tell my superiors I did mobile. So you got to shift away from that. This shouldn't be about checking the box. This should be about what can I do to really connect with the consumer. That's one thing. The other is think about the audience you want to reach and what the right creative experience is going to be with that audience. So, for example, I talked about that American Family Insurance, but that was a pretty cool, they thought about the audience. They identified it to 13 DMAs, 13 cities. They thought about something that would resonate to this demographic, kind of a younger demographic, so came up with an interesting game experience. So, think audience and what's the experience that's going to resonate with that audience. Transparency is maybe the third bucket I look into, really, particularly on performance, understanding truly how things perform across the various channels. You can't necessarily expect from the networks full transparency into all the apps or publishing partners specifically, because by nature, if you work with premier partners, they're going to be a little bit protective on full transparency, but you certainly want to understand how things did across your different channels and what type of advice you can get in terms of what you saw, and is there anything unique about the program that gives you data? Like our system can tell you more about what did people redeem from a reward standpoint. All that kind of comes back into informing your experience. Those are a few. I guess thinking more about the post-click action you want to drive. What is it that you want someone to do after they've watched an ad experience is important, because if done correctly, you really can shift a lot of traffic into that. So think about that. And the last one I say, you got to embrace value exchange. I'm a big believer that if you give value, you show the consumer that you are recognizing, rewarding, and appreciating their time. Going back to that shifting 27 times an hour, you've got to give them a reason why they should invest with your brand. And our belief is you've got to incorporate this value exchange and give them something of a value that they then can go redeem for things they want. So those would be 5 kind of quick things I think about that could be helpful.
They're great, and I love that value exchange. When you create a reward system for an app that gets people back into that app, are you worried that they come into the app just for the rewards and be damned of the brand? Are you creating fans of the brand, or are you creating fans of getting rewarded? You know what I mean?
I do. It's a great question, and it's one we talk about quite a bit. So a couple of things. We don't ever want rewards and loyalty systems to replace a quality application or a quality brand message. So that's the first thing. We're not trying to say we're going to make a crappy app great or a terrible brand advertising phenomenal. So you got to start with quality across the board. That's the first thing. That said, what we feel is important is driving sort of habitual behavior and convincing someone that this is an important part of their routine. And that's okay if that's reward-based, because again, this is not uncommon to the way things work outside of mobile. It's not uncommon to the human psychology and how we like to sort of get something for our time. So it's both, you got to start with quality, but it's okay if people like the rewards, because what we're seeing is they're consuming more content, they're interacting with ads, they're recalling the ads, they're getting a positive brand lift association with those ads, so it works. And it's working in a way that is far more effective than just blasting out a banner with no loyalty or incentive system around it. So we really have to change the way we think about these things, because I find it, if you look at television as an example, we watch commercials to get the content we want. We don't necessarily go home and just watch commercials for the sake of it. We watch it because it gets us to the content, and we understand that's how they pay for the content. Or think about pre-roll video on the web, the wide web. It's accepted. I'll watch my pre-roll ad for a car, and I'll get to my article that I want to go see. So, and the incentive is the article. So there's lots of examples of people kind of going through certain experiences to get their reward, and we're just doing it in a different and kind of scalable, platform-centric way that we think is really helpful to app developers and advertisers alike.
Good answer. I like that. All right, now it's a little bit of crystal ball gazing. This industry has gone through tremendous transformation since you got into this space. Certainly, I mean, you've been around doing this long before the iPhone kind of reinvented the smartphone market and really took off. So talk about this. Talk about where this is going from here. You believe that what you're doing right now is has a shelf life of how long, and then what do you think replaces this, and what goes beyond what you guys are doing right now? I look. Banner ads, give up, go away, get rid of them. I'd love them to just die, right? But there are companies making a lot of money still to this day on this. But contextualized work that you guys are doing is where we're emerging into, and what happens after that?
Yeah, so I think that's the phase that we're coming into, the phase 3 or the third evolution of the mobile ad experience, and that's what we're one of the companies at the forefront of trying to push that. I think probably the next phase is more around this connected devices, so kind of time-based experiences across all the devices. So some of the things you're seeing with companion viewing in television, I think that's going to get bigger and bigger, where you have actions you can take on a mobile device that are maybe synchronized with what's going on in television, and then you bring in the desktop or the PC as part of that experience. And we're still early there. People are doing some interesting things with Shazam, for example, is rolling out some interesting ways to interact with TV via your mobile device. But I see more and more of that happening, and potentially more and more on the hardware side when you think about what could happen between linking the actual television set with mobile devices and ways that the mobile device can control that experience. So I think maybe, just thinking ahead, and maybe an innovative phase for the next one would be true synchronized connected advertising across platforms and devices.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that concept. I love what Shazam is doing. I think that they're about to disrupt traditional advertising networks, right? I think that this is pretty significant, and hopefully people start to see this and wake up, because a lot of people are going to wake up one day and the shift will have happened, and they'll be standing alone in this barren place thinking, what did I miss? How did I get here? This is Shazam with 250 million people. All right, so how important is location in all of this? Like, we talked about context, but how important is this thing that is basically like dial tone right now, which is location? Is that the linchpin here? Is it the beginning? How important is that?
It's important. I mean, for what we do, location is very important at more at a city and DMA level. We find a lot of brands want to reach somebody, in New York or Boston or San Francisco. We don't. I think hyperlocal certainly is going to be more and more important, but there's some real challenges with that. What's the right experience? When do you deliver it? How do you not concern the consumer with the message you're delivering? So I think that for us isn't quite as important right now, but definitely in DMA and city-based targeting, a lot of our brand buys utilize that piece of it and that ability to do that in mobile. And location is, it is one of the core differences with mobile compared to other mediums that you can geo-target. So I think for us, DMA is very important right now. I do think what I call hyperlocal or more, street-based will be a part of our future, but it's a little tricky right now to do. But location in general is a core tenet of mobile advertising. What
do you think it takes to get that super hyperlocal? Everybody's talking about that, right? The SoLoMo movement, and especially when it comes to the potential to target your neighbor, right? Because of a certain demographic, But ultimately, does it require too much of a mind shift away from the way that we traditionally advertise to be able to say, listen, look, you're going to hire us because we're going to hit that one customer that wants what you want, right? We're not quite there yet, but is it eventually going to get there? That focused?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're actually seeing the beginnings of it happen right now if you look at someone like Square and what they're doing on the payment side of things. I think where the local booms is when you can tie that easy offer or message into the point of redemption and the point of sale, which has always been the big challenge so far, is it's just always not scalable, it's not efficient, and Square is really powerful. I mean, it is an impressive experience, going into a store, having it pop up, going to the iPad-based point of sale, hey Lars, you're here, boom, click, it's done. So I'm a huge believer in this innovation on the payment side, and I think the payment innovation will be blended with the local-based advertising opportunities to bring those two together in a really measurable way. And to me, that's when it takes off. And we're starting to see the beginning. We haven't seen the connection yet, but we're starting to see the beginning of that.
I really see that, especially, because when you're closing the loop, which is whatever every company should want to do, which is get a customer and then close the loop for that customer. Show that you can actually close a sale by actually closing a sale. Ultimately, they will never leave you as a customer if you just do that one thing, right? If they pay you a little bit of money and you generate more than that for them in revenue, they will stay with you forever, right? As far as I mean, that's my logic. What about small businesses?
Works.
So say that again.
I said it works. That math works.
It does quite often. Last question here, Lars, and then I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate you spending this much time with us. What about small businesses? Like this is, they tend to default back to the banner ad because it's an affordable solution, and as you said, it's a check mark on the mobile play. Yes, my banner is done. Maybe if they can geo-target by postal code or by city, they're happy with that. But there are, I don't think there is a business out there that shouldn't be looking at mobile to increase footfall and increase traffic and awareness of their business. But how do small businesses play in this, where there's not a lot of a budget and they can't do this on a sustained basis, but they still need to be able to get into this space?
Yeah, I think I believe everyone's got to experiment.
Yeah.
We're early enough in it, and you got to try things. One of the things I talk about is there's really no perfect mobile campaign. You can't sit around waiting forever for something to magically appear that's going to answer all of your problems and be the perfect campaign. So you got to try things. And I say that if you're a Fortune 500 brand that's going to spend $5 million, or you're a small business who's going to spend 500, you just don't know until you try, and you got to try. So that would be my first piece of advice: is try things. You do it on a performance basis, so make sure that you're paying for what you get, and not just on the click-through rate, but also what is the action that you're measuring, and make sure you have the right tags and systems in place to measure that. So if it's clicking on a store locator or signing up for an offer, make sure that's what you're measuring, and you're backing that cost into the equation, whether or not it worked for you. So it's not just about what was the CTR, it's what was the CTR and what did the user do, and did that achieve its goal? And then most importantly, how does that compare to other mediums? Did that outperform or match other approaches that I could use? And once you look at those, you start to learn, and you test, and you do more campaigns, and you optimize it, and you get to a place hopefully that's a good result. So big message is test, be metrics driven, and look at the results.
I love it. Lars, where do we send people? SessionM.com, is that where you'd like me to drive all this traffic?
That'd be great. Yeah, SessionM.com. We're actually launching a new site this week, so you'll get all sorts of good tidbits and information, and we're happy to help however we can.
No, I appreciate that. Go to www.sessionm.com, exactly as it sounds. We've been speaking, obviously, with Lars Albright, who is the co-founder of SessionM. He's also the co-founder of Quattro Wireless, that was purchased by Apple to create iAds. So what we've just had is an hour of time with a guy who has grown up and influenced this industry from the get-go. So hopefully I know. If you didn't find any value in this, email me, because we'll go and we'll have a one-on-one session. I know you found a tremendous amount of value in it, and I can't thank Lars enough for being a part of this. Thank you, Lars. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Rob.
All right, we've been speaking with Lars Albright, who's the co-founder of SessionM. Go to sessionm.com for all of you guys out there, wherever you are, whatever you are doing. Maybe you've just woken up, you're coming out of the gym, maybe you're driving in your car, you're on a road trip, you're on an airplane, you're listening to this. However you're consuming this, I really appreciate the fact that you do this each and every week. Man, it means a lot to me. Reach out if you found value. You know what? Hit up Lars. Send a note to Lars. Go to the website. Tweet out that you saw this episode. I really appreciate that. Stealing that from Andrew Warner over at MixerG. But whatever you do, come back next week, because there's going to be another one of these interviews. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody. Lars, man, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
So long.
See you, everybody.